Hello, class, and welcome to Abnormal Psychology. Welcome to the first week of the course. This lecture video will serve the purpose as to reviewing your week one agenda, as well as going over a few housekeeping things. Specifically, I want you guys to ensure that you are looking over the syllabus so you are aware of specific things that are due, when they're due, and things like that, as well as your textbooks. You guys should have those already. And as well as completing your SRA agreements. If you are watching this video, then you have completed it. So I want to make sure that that is done and you have seen everything that you need to see on your syllabus. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I will answer those. I think the main focus of this lecture video will be the essay that is due this week. And we're jumping right into it. I know we just finished E1 yesterday. But we are jumping head first into this course. So the first assignment, like I said, will be the essay. This week you'll have a couple readings to do. You'll read chapters 1 and 2. You'll watch this lecture video that I'm recording right now. And you'll also have a discussion board post. This post, of course, should be no less than 250 words. And you are responding to 2 of your classmates as well. It'll follow the readings that you guys have for this week. But I really wanted to touch on the essay because I believe that it's very important that I give you guys a background of what I'm looking for in terms of your papers and things like that. So the first essay that you'll have for this week, this course, is the abnormal behavior essay. And the main purpose of this essay is for you guys to write a 3-page essay in APA format. And if you are not aware of APA formatting, I will provide an example for you guys in this lecture. There's also an example in the week 1 announcement. So if you, excuse me, if you want to go and check that out, you can do that as well, but I will talk about it in this video. So this essay, of course, like I said, is 3 pages. You will explore and explain the various components of abnormal behavior. So after you take on your reading for this week of chapters 1 and 2, it'll talk about the various levels of abnormal behavior. And from that, you will write an essay on it. So you'll be taking into consideration any research that we discuss in the the text, or any additional research that you found on the library, historical views, and a faith integration piece. So this is how it'll basically be. So you'll have your introduction section. You'll briefly introduce the reader to your topic. You'll be using, of course, your citations when necessary. And you'll outline basically what will be covered within the paper. And this is very important to introduce the crowd to your paper, and especially me. So I know what you're going to be talking about. I know what the basis of your paper is going to be talking about, and have that specific outline so it'll create a flow and your paper will be very well-rounded. So the next part of that, you'll introduce your literature review. So of course you'll have your components of your literature review, which is your articles, things like that. And in your own words, you'll define each of the specific components and specific examples, whether that's psychological disabilities, subjective distress, cultural inappropriateness, specific fetishes, things like that society considers abnormal. And you'll have that outlined to where you can discuss and offer a few examples for each of those that you discuss. Next, you will have your research. And this is important too because, like I said, always cite your references, but the research just adds a bit of contextual information. So we have proof and evidence and academic research of these abnormal behaviors that we are discussing. And of course, you'll discuss how the research is useful in specifically understanding what abnormal behavior is and how it's studied and things like that. What and how experimental studies, maybe correlational studies, and other aspects of research has shed light on what is viewed as normal and abnormal behavior. And be sure to offer some specific examples. There's so many case studies and things like that on foot fetishes. I know I keep saying foot fetishes, but you'll learn so much more about other things. But there's so many different classifications of what abnormal behavior is. So I'm really interested to see what you guys' take on the first 2 chapters is of this course. And this course, I do have to mention, it will be very interesting. So I look forward to your thoughts and your papers and your assignments and things like that. So just to see what you guys are thinking of the material. And lastly, you'll have your historical perspective. So you'll select one of the historical perspectives that have been discussed in chapters 1 and 2. So demonology, organic view, a psychological view, or whatever you believe explains best what the abnormal behavior is about. You'll describe your view and explain why it examines the abnormal behavior in the way that it does. So that will be that part. Of course, with all papers and assignments at CBU, there is a faith and spiritual integration. So for this, you'll write at least 1 or 2 paragraphs, and I do encourage you guys to step outside of your box and, of course, incorporate scripture and things like that. It doesn't even have to be from, what you would say, the Bible or anything like that. Whatever you feel relates mostly to the topic. It could be from, I don't know, the Quran. It could be from the Bible. It can be from whatever type of faith that you believe in, specifically, whether that's not Christianity. But I do want you guys to challenge yourselves and reach outside the box and just explore what forms of abnormal behavior may have or may have not been present within a faith component, if that makes sense. So of course you'll share your personal belief on how Christians can approach mental illness or abnormal behavior and what the Bible says specifically, or what that specific religion says. How might Christians provide support for those who are suffering from mental illness, whether that be therapy in churches or support groups, things like that. Can faith or a belief in a higher power be helpful in enduring or having a mental illness? And of course, provide at least 1 scripture to support your perspective. But I also too want you guys to incorporate your own personal experience or something you have seen in this section. I think that will definitely provide some depth and some context to your assignment. And of course, your paper must be 3 to 4 pages in length, APA formatted, so you'll include a title page, and I will not be requiring an abstract, but you will need a reference page. So of course you'll need subheaders. I really am a stickler for subheaders and proper APA formatting in terms of source citations, and always remember to rephrase your sources in your own words. I can't say that enough. And you'll need at least a minimum of 3 peer-reviewed sources other than the textbook. Oh no, sorry. Your textbook can be included in that 3 sources. Sorry. So at least a minimum of 2 peer-reviewed journal articles. And of course, you can find those journal articles in the library online, the database, or you can go to Google Scholar. They have a great little source where you can type in whatever you're looking for, whatever that may be. Say, for instance, abnormal behavior, type it into Google Scholar, and it'll pop up some articles for you. So with that being said on that assignment, so here is also the rubric of what exactly I'm looking for. If you follow this rubric to a T, you should be absolutely fine. And that's with any assignment. But if you have any additional comments, questions, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. I do want to jump into the APA formatted paper just so you guys have an idea. If you don't know what an APA formatted paper is, what that looks like. And I am jumping into an APA formatted paper from Dr. Frederick at Cal Baptist. So if you look here, you will see this paper has a header and a page number. So you'll need, on the first page of the title page, you'll need a header with the running head in the title. And then of course you'll have your title. Following that, you have your title here, as well as your name and California Baptist, things like that. On the next page, as you could see, the second page does not include the running head. However, it does have the title and the page number. But this is the abstract. I just want to let you know that we will not be requiring an abstract, but if you are going to do one, this is what it would look like. Now, jumping into the first page, and you see how this is the introductory section, and it just has an overview of what exactly will be discussed, and here is an important sentence. This paper will describe the overlap between burnout, compassion fatigue, characterized by lack of accomplishment, personal accomplishments, emotional exhaustion, and depersonalization. This is an important sentence. This is exactly what I'm looking forward to for you guys' introduction, because it tells me exactly what you're discussing and the main points that you will be touching on. So I think that's an important addition to the introduction. And then here you will see this is a subheader, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. They look so good in a paper. It outlines your paper so very well, and it enhances the overall presentation of your paper and the readability, honestly. I could say that as I've been an adjunct here for about 4 years, and it's so much easier to read a paper that is visually pleasing and has the subheaders, and it's outlined, and it's organized, and it helps with the organization as well. So make sure you guys are including those. So here you'll see a few areas of citation. The citation for an article, say for instance, someone was writing an article about burnout. In this instance, the author's name and the date that it was published is all you need in terms of a citation within the text. Here you'll see page 10. In some instances, you can include that specifically if you're doing a direct quote. I encourage you guys to do page numbers, but if you're not doing a direct quote, it is not necessarily needed. And I'm trying to see if there's anything else I wanted to touch on in terms of APA formatting for you guys. I can show you the reference page. It's all the way at the bottom. Sorry if this is making you dizzy. Yeah, so here's the reference page, and of course you'll have your title on here in the header as well as your page number, references centered in the middle, and you'll have your references in alphabetical order. You'll have your author, the date of publication, the title of the book, where it was published, and the second line, anything that runs over is indented on the second line. So this is a great outline for you guys that aren't familiar with APA formatting. For those of you that are familiar, I know this might just be a touch-up for you guys. But I think that's basically all I want to discuss in terms of APA formatting. So like I said, that's in the announcements. If you want to look at that paper, it's right there for you. In terms of this week's lecture video, I think I might want to touch on a few components. But other than that, I really just wanted to focus on the exam, because I know that is a big part of your assignment for this week. So let me check and see if there's anything I want to discuss. So just to touch on a few things, within this chapter, we're on chapter 1 in this slide. The main things I want to touch on are what exactly is abnormal behavior. I'll discuss this a little bit. These are behaviors that are deemed culturally inappropriate, and may be accompanied by some subjective distress, and involves a psychological impairment. And when we think of things like that, what are the main areas or topics or behaviors that come up for you guys? And I think just to challenge you a little bit and start thinking about what behaviors do you consider abnormal, and what may not, or what others may not consider the same in terms of abnormal behavior. And what is your specific criteria in terms of what behavior meets that abnormal justification? So in terms of cultural inappropriateness, of course, there's disturbing behavior, puzzling, irrational, and it doesn't specifically relate to cultural norms or views of appropriateness. So I want to move on because I believe you know what abnormal is at this point in your academic career. But there's a few things I want to touch on. I don't think there's anything else I want to talk to you about because, of course, correlational research is an important part of the discussion of abnormal behavior. So let's jump on to chapter 2. As I mentioned before, I'm not going to spend too much time on these chapters because you have a lot of work to do in terms of your essay. Next week, I'll probably spend a little bit more time with the PowerPoints, but for this, I want to keep it rather short because it's the first week, and you have a lot to do this week. So let's jump right into chapter 2. And I want you guys to think about, too, in terms of abnormal behavior and how that may have looked in the early 1800s and the early 1900s, and how that may have transgressed through history. If you haven't already taken a history of psych course, you may have a little bit of an insight in terms of what psychology has looked like through history. So this might be just a touch up on that. But a lot of abnormal behavior was often seen as demonic behavior back in the early 18th century, early 19th century, and things like that. A lot of people viewed this abnormal behavior, whether someone had schizophrenia or depression or anxiety, these were viewed as demonic possessions and often treated through exorcisms and not just treated, but some people were outcast and things like that. So, and of course, this shows of prehistoric skulls showing signs of exorcism. But just think about that in terms of history and how we are today in terms of when it comes to mental health and mental illness, the stigma that is placed on, mental illness and things like that, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia. Just imagine how it was back in the day when they had no idea what these illnesses were and how they wanted normal behavior all the time, and it was such a huge stigma and huge thing back in the day, and now it's more normalized because we are aware of mental illnesses and things like that. However, stigma is still placed on mental illness to this day, and I'm not sure if that will change. I'm hoping that it will lighten up a little bit, but we never know because, of course, many people have that abnormal behavior and normal behavior is glued in their mind. Like, this is how you're supposed to act. This is what's supposed to happen. So I think that definitely has a huge impact on our views in terms of abnormal behavior. And speaking along the lines of it too, as well as demonic behavior, a lot of these mental illness and things like that many people may have been showing in terms of abnormal behavior was deemed part of witchcraft too. So if you think about many of the historical contributions of witch slayings and how people thought people were witches and they were going to extreme measures to get rid of these witches and get rid of these demons, when many of them were just mentally ill people. And it's scary to think about now how many people may have been killed or murdered because of a mental health issue. And it just speaks to how, back then they didn't know much about mental illness, and how I'm so grateful now that we're in the 21st century that we do have a lot of research and education on terms of these illnesses. So like I said, viewing treatment of mental illness throughout history, even though we have causes for mental illness and things like that, there's still people that do believe of demon possessions and things like that. And that stems from, of course, the early beliefs of demonology in terms of mental illness. So I think that's carried on today. In early times, we talked about this in history and systems too. You probably talked about this in your intro to psych classes. But asylums were the first mental health institutions in the early times, and frequently They started in monasteries and churches. And they began as places where, mentally ill people could find food, shelter. But like all hospitals in today's times, a lot of them are overcrowded and overpopulated. So back then they became overcrowded and overpopulated, and also unsanitary. And the way they were treating people back in the day in terms of asylums was definitely unacceptable. It was kind of like a trial and error period, specifically for mental illness to be concerned, because people were trying to figure out what exactly, how to treat mental illnesses and what stems from mental illnesses and things like that. So it was a trial and error on human beings. Let's see. I think that's pretty much all. And of course, learned behavior and operant condition and things like that were also a huge study back in the day in terms of mental illness. And they believed in how to train the brain to get away from these abnormal behaviors and things like that. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I want to talk to you guys about in terms of chapters 1 and chapter 2. Like I said, the main focus for this week is that essay, and I want you guys to get that done and completed. And like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is on the syllabus. If you want to have a call chat, you can do that as well. Just email me and we can set something up. But I think that's all for this week. I hope you guys have a great week, and I look forward to reading your assignment, and we'll talk soon.